Good afternoon, everyone. We're just letting people in, so we're going to take a minute or two just to let people get situated. We're expecting quite a crowd here today, so we have just an absolutely great event here planned for everyone. We're just going to take a minute for people logging in right now, so just bear with us for a couple of minutes as we watch the numbers add up here. Let's see. I just want to welcome everyone. We have a great event planned. We're just watching the numbers grow here for participants. So we're just going to give everyone a minute or two and then we'll get started. It looks like it's going to be a great turnout here. All right, as people are coming in, I'm going to just get started because we have an hour. We have a lot to talk about. This is a really terrific event we have planned, and we appreciate Bruce Jackson for joining us. And he's just done absolutely amazing things with writing this book. And today's conversation is going to be just a very candid conversation about diversity and giving people some tips, whether you are diverse and trying to succeed, or you're a leader trying to build a very diverse organization. Either way, it's going to be pretty valuable content. So, Averill, we'll just cover a couple of housekeeping items here. So this is part of our BarkerGilmore's GC Advantage program. Once a month, we do these webinars. The webinars are all geared toward helping people serve as better strategic advisors and business partners. Feel free to go to our website. We do record these events, and you can take a look at past events. So our next upcoming webinar is going to be something of interest to everyone: preparing yourself and your law department for the next recession. We're hopeful that whatever the Fed is doing, that it turns into a soft landing versus a hard landing. But next month, we have Michelle Banks and Mike Williams, two of our very highly respected advisors, running that event. So, and the one area here is questions. We want this to be a very interactive event, so feel free to raise your hand or ask a question, and then we're going to be answering the questions as we move forward. So I guess first, John Gilmore here, managing partner of BarkerGilmore. Actually, just so everyone knows, I'm talking to you from my new office. I'm going to spend some time here in Florida. We're building a great Florida practice. So if anyone's in Florida, we're working on quite a number of opportunities, and we have a number of great candidates in the Florida area. So I welcomed the opportunity to meet people. We, of course, today, Bruce Jackson. For those who don't know Bruce, he is a trailblazer and an influencer. And I haven't even told Bruce this part of the presentation, but I had the good fortune of meeting Bruce, and I owe Lloyd Johnson full credit for it. Lloyd invited me in the fall to Black In-House Counsel event. And I'm in the event room. I was one of the first to arrive. I'm an early riser, and then Bruce walks in the door, and Bruce, I'm watching him from a distance, and I could see all the attention focusing on Bruce, and I could immediately knew that he was something special and definitely an influencer for this group. And so I made a point of going up and meeting Bruce, introducing myself, and we got talking about the book that he had just written that was going to be published in February. And the more I heard about the book and the more he heard about BarkerGilmore's mission, we thought there was something that we could do on a collaborative basis to help support Bruce and his mission and get the word out on this book. And it's been just an amazing experience getting to know Bruce and getting to know his mission and getting to know the people around him. So I think everyone's really going to enjoy this conversation. But more important than that, even is, when you receive this copy of this book, which the book's going to be coming out, Simon & Schuster is going to be releasing the book in February. I can assure everyone it's one of those books you just can't put down, and just a very inspirational and very educational read that I know everyone's going to enjoy. And the one thing that I'll say is, don't just enjoy the book to yourself. We want people to be passing this on and getting the word around, because Bruce's mission and what he's gone through to get where he is today is something that everybody should know what's been done and what it took to get where he is today and what can be done for future generations. So really, really important. So I guess all that said, Bruce, I want to welcome you here to the stage. And my first question, of course, is going to be, what was your motivation to write this story? And what is the message, the primary message that you hope to get at, that you hope to deliver to people?
All right, first, I'd like to thank you, John, for having me. So in terms of the book, I was approached several years ago by an entertainment client of mine about writing a book and try to inspire those in the inner city to achieve more. And I wasn't quite ready, I think, but I was approached again about 2 years ago when I started writing this book. And it's all about vulnerability. And I kind of offset the vulnerability with the prospect that I'm going to help with criminal justice reform, social equity, and that kind of outbalanced the vulnerability aspect of writing a book and being so open and candid. I think in terms of who I want to inspire, I'm thinking about the people in urban America. And after having a conversation with Brad Smith, who was our vice chair and president of Microsoft, he and his chief of staff kind of spent 2 hours with me at the outset when I started talking about writing the book. And I agree with them. They said, no, Bruce, your book is going to inspire not just those in the urban area, but those in rural America, immigrants, LGBTQ plus community, women. Is going to inspire many people, even people around the world. And I kind of agreed. Once I wrote the book, I agreed and started talking to colleagues, and they all said, no, Bruce, I'm from India, and that's inspirational to me, the fact that you wrote something like that. So in addition to just inspiring people to really reach their potential, because society is not really set up that way, and that's a separate discussion, John, you and I could have another day, because I'm not really supposed to be here today, to be in a position where I'm talking to you from where I came and sitting in the office of the vice chair at Microsoft. But I also want to inspire people who are privileged. They have obstacles to overcome, as well as companies. And how do you get past these barriers? But more importantly, is about people who are privileged. I want to give them proximity to what life is really like, right? And with that proximity, hopefully it breeds empathy and it breeds support. And we can count on them too to help us along this journey to really not leave another generation of brilliant minds behind. And what I mean by that, they're brilliant people, immigrants who are coming, different categories, and they just don't have the resources or the environment to be successful, and women as well. And what I mean by that a little further, I tell my colleagues all the time, I said, no one's smarter than anyone else. I said, if you take a kid from the projects, and the projects is really public housing, where I grew up, and you put them in a affluent area in any neighborhood, that kid will do really well and exceed. And if you take a kid from an affluent area and put them in a project, that kid will struggle. So it's really all about resources and opportunities and environment. And that's one of the things that I want to happen. But before that happens, I certainly want to inspire people to achieve their best, to achieve their potential, despite the situation they're currently facing.
Well, that's fantastic. I hate to give away some of the book, but I do have some things from the book that I want to talk about. Sure. One of the things as a teenager, you describe yourself in the book as young, poor, short-sighted, and impulsive. Those are typically not words that we use in our assessment for fine lawyers out there. What was the moment in your life where you said, hey, I want to be a lawyer? And then what were the key or what were the key events that happened in your life that actually pushed you or helped you achieve that goal? Because I think you're spot on, getting more people that wouldn't think they have the capabilities to be a lawyer, that you turn them on to law and getting them into law. It's going to put so many more people out there that can help some of this, the issues with diversity in law.
Right. I think initially my idea or thought of becoming a lawyer came from a show, Perry Mason, on television. Some of you may be familiar with that show, but I'm not sure how realistic it was at the time. In fact, I look back now and it was very unrealistic. But then that kind of transformed over time. Then my interest was really about social justice and equity, because I saw the inequity that was taking place in my community. But I then became fascinated with tax law. And that's the route that I pursued. So I think what people have to do, and of course, my journey, I certainly wanted to give up and quit, even in college. But I remember one thing that really changed. I called my aunt and she said, Aunt Viola is her name, and you'll read more details in a book. But just to give you a short synopsis, I said, I'm quitting. This stuff is just too hard. I can't do it. And she said, what am I going to do? Go back to a job in the basement of Chase making copies, go back to the projects? And I said, I don't know. And then she went on and stated, well, Bruce, you're doing this for your grandmother who picked cotton and worked in people's houses all her life and couldn't look people in the face and had to say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. You're doing it for your mother who picked cotton in the South and had to say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. You're doing it for me, who had to do the same and had to endure KK coming to our house and us running under the house to hide. You're doing it for the Jackson family. None of us ever went to college, not just your generation, but any generation in the past. And she hung up. And I thought about that. And that's when I realized that what I'm about to encounter was not for me. And that's the strength I got. Yeah. It was for the next generation. And so what I did essentially was said to myself is, Bruce, there's going to be some struggles, right? And I use this quote by Frederick Douglass: is there's no struggle, there's no progress. And there's another poem by Longfellow that talks about the height reached and kept by great men were not achieved by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upwards during the night. So that kind of was my goal. That was my whole inspiration, my family, and just living those two values, the principles. The poem was saying, hey, Bruce, people may have a head start. They're not smarter. There's going to be struggles that you have to go through to catch up. But the average person doesn't want to work more than the minimum time required. And what I mean by that, if it's 9 to 5, 5:01, they leave. And so when my roommates in college would party and come back at 1, I was at my desk. When my roommates were partying and coming back at 1 in law school, I was at my desk. And they would say, what are you doing, Bruce? And to myself, I said, I'm catching up. But I didn't let them know it. So I think you have to, and that was the inspiration, that call from my aunt. And it was a call to action for me to really inspire the next generation, right? And to really, and what I came with was the burden and the strength of all my past generations and a purpose going forward. So with that, no one could outwork me, right? Because I was coming with a certain amount of energy that people couldn't understand.
That's fantastic. I know you mentioned, one of the things you mentioned in the book is your couple of your quotes: long-term development over short-term comfort. And there are no shortcuts. You need to work your butt off. And one of the things that I'm really impressed with is your career stability. You've been with Microsoft for so many years and have allowed yourself to elevate every year, so often with these promotions. And we talk to we see a lot of resumes for people that they've been recruited. Some of the diverse candidates that we work with, they've been recruited over and over again, and they jumped ship maybe one too many times. What are your thoughts when you're evaluating an opportunity? Sometimes you're getting money, and one of the things you did in the book when you first joined into the music business is you took a big cut in pay to really learn that business. I mean, so what's your advice to people when they're at that juncture where they're deciding between different opportunities? What should their priorities be?
It certainly shouldn't be money, right? It certainly should be what your goal is, your career goal, and what you're trying to achieve. I think you're absolutely right. When I went from the tax firm to entertainment, I went from being at the top salary at a tax firm and an entertainment firm. I was pretty much an intern. I made $12,000 over 2 years, but it was all about the learning opportunity for me at that point, right? So, and that worked out. So I think the same thing going to Microsoft from the entertainment area. I kind of coach people all the time, look at where we were, look at where we are in an industry, and look at where we're going strategically. As a lawyer, you just can't put your head down. It's not just about T's and C's. You have to understand the business more than anything else that you're supporting. And when I went to Microsoft, that was a strategic move initially, because we talk about digital transformation today, but the digital transformation for the music industry took place in 2000, because we had the physical format of music, and then we went to Napster to digital. And that kind of turned the industry upside down. So then I took another leap of faith and said, I want to learn that. I want to come back with a competitive advantage over any other attorneys, not knowing the technology portion of it. But then I went to Seattle, which is far away from New York. And I think you have to go to where the opportunities are, right? And make those sacrifices. And when I did that, I left my family behind. That was a price that I ultimately paid. But I think you have to make sacrifices to really get to where you want to go. And don't always, I think sometimes the knee-jerk reaction that I hear is that this company's paying me a lot of money. It's more than that. It's about culture. It's about opportunity to grow. It's about basically doing what you are comfortable and what you really want to do for your career.
And you sure put your money where your mouth is when it comes to taking the hard road and paying dues to get where you are today. The one thing that you brought to light for me that I've been in executive search for a long time, and we're really proud of the work we've done for diversity, but I never thought of this. You mentioned being the third Black lawyer to Microsoft, that you say it's hard to start a new job and doubly hard for a Black person. And one of the things that you mentioned is that in the book is it was a little lonely being the only Black person or one of the few Black people in the company and the community of Seattle at the time. Maybe you could shed some light on people when they are bringing diversity, some leaders bringing diverse candidates in, what can they do to acclimate them or make it successful, make it a successful onboarding process?
Right. I did that throughout my career. The first tax firm I worked for, I was the only African-American they ever hired. So I felt lonely there too, right? I would spend my time really socializing with the people in the mailroom and the cafeteria because I felt isolated. No one invited me to lunch. No one invited me to join them after work. No one invited me to any sports events. And so I experienced that there. And going out to Microsoft, I was a third hired African-American, but by the time I got there was only two of us. So again, isolation, the same sort of scenario. I wasn't included, right? So I think people in the city of Seattle was really 6% African-American. So I would be lucky if I would see one African-American on a daily basis. So it got to the point where I actually went to Microsoft after 2 years and stated, I'm not negotiating, but I'm going back home. And they asked why. I was pretty candid. I said, it's not enough diversity out here. And it's not just Microsoft, it's Seattle. And if Brad Smith, again, who's the vice chair, who's been extremely supportive with me throughout my entire career, if he didn't intervene, I wouldn't be here today as a Microsoft employee. He said, let's figure out where we can send you, where we think you're a valuable asset to Microsoft, if we can find something in New York for you. And he did, and it was the sales position. But I think the answer to that is, one, you just have to include people, make them feel included. And one way to look at it, perhaps, is put yourself in a position. If you're the minority in the room, and just imagine if you're the minority, not just in a room, in the city, what would you want to happen to make you feel comfortable? And my point to you is we feel the same way. We want exactly what you want. So that's how you get the answer, just to invite people to things, have them feel inclusive. And I think ultimately you have to actually hire more people of color. There's no question. But before you get to that journey, if it is a journey, you have to try to make people feel comfortable.
It had to be pretty tough for you, rubbing elbows with all the top rappers in the country and really enjoying that music. And next thing you know, you have to go to a bar and listen to Nirvana. So you had to be a little homesick for the people and just the overall culture. It's like, I get it.
My friends don't know that I actually went and listened to grunge. So they'll find out about it for the book. So I guess you're starting to let people know what life is really like for me out in Seattle.
Yeah.
Start to conform a bit.
The one thing, I know you're being humble in the book, but you mentioned that a lot of your success is luck. And I will agree, you walk this tightrope your whole life where if you made one wrong move or one move different, you wouldn't be here today talking to us. But I feel that one of your gifts was making an impression on people and surrounding yourself with all these mentors. And the good news is it seems like these mentors all gave you great advice. And one of the mentors that you call out several in the book, you talk about your family and but many of the other mentors in law. But even like Clarence Avant was one of your mentors that helped direct you towards Microsoft. And for people that don't know, Clarence Avant is one of the most influential people in Black culture. And it's pretty incredible that you had such a powerful mentor. So I guess question twofold. One is, what do you think made it so special that these mentors wanted to dig in and help you out, because they didn't have to? And for people who haven't read the book yet, I'm talking about, what school to go, what program to get into for undergrad, going to Georgetown versus a tier 4 law school, going to the law firm, going into music, going to Microsoft, all these things that came from being surrounded by good people. So what advice would you give people to how do you get a mentor like Clarence? Maybe you want to talk about that, but how do you get these mentors that believe in you and want to really help you navigate through your life?
Right. I'll start by saying I think it's a myth when people say just work hard and you get there. I think that's part of the formula, right? You have to work hard and you have to outwork people. There's no question about it. But I think you need mentors, and not just mentors, sponsors, right? And sometimes they happen organically, right? And strategically, you can be strategic about it as well. If it doesn't happen organically, be strategic, be around people who you want to emulate, right? And try to do something for them as well. Like even with Clarence, I would offer up, like, Clarence, what do you need me to do for you? And I never really asked him for anything. I could have asked him for anything. He had connections with presidents as well. But it's about offering strategically, offering help up to people. I mean, even Brad, when Brad became the general counsel, one of the things I remember at 2001, there was a Christmas party in Seattle. That's when I was there. And I walked up to him and said, just let me know if I can ever do anything to help you be successful. So if it just doesn't happen, you have to be sincere and strategic about finding mentors, but particularly sponsors, right? Someone who's really going to advance your career when the doors are closed, and someone who's going to mention your name. So I was just fortunate along my career, and even up to now, and I review Brad not just as a friend, but as a sponsor as well. And awesome. My goal is for someone like that, your goal is to always do whatever you can do to make sure they're successful and that they stay around for as long as possible because of the work that they're doing.
I mean, you call it fortunate, but that's pretty darn strategic thinking on your end, or just good thinking on your end, that you didn't go to Brad saying, hey, here I am, looking for something for yourself. I love the approach that you went to Brad and said, here, hey, congratulations, and let me know how I can help you be successful.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. Well, I think so highly of Brad already anyway, but one of the things you mentioned is that if Brad didn't walk the walk, then walk the talk, then you probably would have left. And we just recently did a survey. We have a paper coming out shortly that's talking about DE&I initiatives, and we're very surprised. 31% of the respondents said that they do not have a specific DE&I initiative, and those companies that did have different initiatives were more successful in building programs. So I guess I'm curious, like, so you're lawyer number 3, Black lawyer number 3 at Microsoft. What made Brad so passionate, and like what were some of the initiatives that he put together that made Microsoft so successful in getting these initiatives implemented?
I think first thing he did was kept me there, right? He found the role for me in New York. That's it. And then one of the things he did, he and I talked, he said, Bruce, I said, there's no verse. He said, we're going to get it right. We're going to get it right, right? And so during the course of it, we started to gradually see an increase in women and minorities at Microsoft, not just at the lower ranks, but there's certainly a goal now to really get women and minorities higher ranks within the department. And so I've seen that, right? What he has done. And with Brad, we can have discussions. He could be in the middle of a meeting somewhere in another city, and if there's a break, I can have a discussion with him about diversity, believe it or not. So he has done all of that. I think one of the things he implemented that I thought was extremely powerful from a diversity standpoint is that there's a lot of activity around diversity, and I consider activity noise, because to me, you want to have activity that would lead to some sort of results. And from the legal profession, we're just not quite there yet. So one of the things he implemented was the law firm diversity program, which is a program, the first version, we're in the second version now, which was to try to get more associates to do Microsoft's work and to get law firms to hire more diverse candidates. But there had to be a partnership between Microsoft and those firms, right? You can't rely on firms to do it all by themselves. And so what he did, he said, I'm going to set aside 5% of my bonus and all of my directs bonus to these law firms meeting these metrics. And the first year, the firms didn't meet them. So therefore, himself and his leadership team lost 5% of their bonus. But every year after that, and the money went to a scholarship, but every year after that, they did it. So I think you got to tie, I think that you reward people who adopt and support your culture, and people who don't, you penalize it, right? So I think when we start talking about, John, diversity, I think that we have the scorecard, and diversity is part of the scorecard. And then you have, at the end of the year, people who've done more in terms of diversity, looking at people who have done less and said, I didn't receive any benefit. So you start to discourage people who are embracing your goals around diversity, which is a bad thing. So what I would suggest is that, one, I think because we have so many brilliant people solving so many difficult problems in the world, I'm still just surprised that we're stuck on this diversity thing. So I think we got to get to a point we have to just hire diverse candidates, right? And one of the things Brad and I even talk about as well is one of the times when you start talking about promoting women and minorities, we got to be buttoned up. And what I mean by buttoned up is, I told you earlier, the T's crossed, the I's dotted to be in a position for a certain period of time, but that's not the case for everyone, right? People are promoted based on potential. So we just have to look at ourselves and determine whether we're doing that. And if we are, course correct, right? But more importantly, I think when it comes to review scorecards, just carve out diversity separately and attach some financial reward to that. And I think you'll start to see the results that we all are looking to achieve.
Yeah. Was it a snowball effect where it started out slow and then as people maybe became more comfortable? The one thing that you didn't mention that we talked about is that you have to bet on people. So people might not be the perfect everything that you're looking for, but bet on them that they have the initiative and work ethic and smarts to come in and become what you're looking for.
Absolutely. There's no difference. The companies or businesses do that today. They have always been doing it. It's just that they don't use the same sort of metrics when it comes to women or minorities. So it's like, let's use that same formula that you're using. Don't dismiss it. Just include another group of people in that same sort of evaluation, or evaluate them how you evaluate others.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you that I'm probably saying the wrong thing to you, but as a recruiter, we're getting the job done by helping our clients achieve their initiatives. That said, I don't want to say it's easy. It's not easy. Finding people that will meet all the expectations of the client, it's not easy. And I think one of the things that makes it sometimes difficult is not finding people that would be right for the position, but so many people are not willing to take the chance like you did to go to a new community, you know, make a move like that. I'm not saying others, I mean, what you did, you know, putting family second, right, you know, to traveling, I don't want to say second, but you made a priority to go to Microsoft, and your family unfortunately did suffer a bit from it, but I think some more attention to people making some of those sacrifices and not necessarily family, but just, you know, moving is not a comfortable move, but sometimes it needs to be done to help achieve the goals that people want to achieve. I mean, there's no luck that you got where you are today. You got where you are today because you took those initiatives and made it happen. So
no, I'm absolutely in agreement with you. I think if there's an opportunity there, you evaluate it. And if it's not, I mean, you have to personally evaluate it. But me personally, I think you have to go with the opportunity, right? And oftentimes, even when I recruit people to Microsoft in Seattle, I'll tell them, listen, and they'll say, Seattle, Bruce. And I'm like, you know what, go, try it. Because, and even if you try it for a few years, it's not going to hurt your resume. So give it a shot. So that's how I get them to move from New York to Seattle, because you have to give it a shot. You have to go where the opportunities are, and particularly if it's a great opportunity.
I have to give, I don't know if it's Brad or just Microsoft in general, a lot of credit for not letting you go and, you know, not letting you leave the company, but open up that business unit in New York, because, you know, I think that kind of flexibility too from the clients, from the company standpoint, is critically important to building. You know, you need to go sometimes where the culture is in a position with a good candidate base, so we can go bring them the talent that they're looking for. Right now, we are finding a lot of people are saying the work remote is not what we're looking for from our leadership team, so we need someone to pack and move. And it is a bit of a struggle right now.
Right, it is. I think that companies have to really evaluate that, right? There's some leaders who are in Seattle and there's some who are not in Seattle. I think it's an individual choice, right? It could be a company's policy generally, but at times you may have to be flexible if it's the right candidate. And at times candidates have to be flexible and move to headquarters if it's the type of jobs they want. So I think there has to be flexibility on both sides.
Yeah, well, that sounds great, and I'm glad it worked out. One thing, you did build an incredibly diverse team, a large team that served this $20 billion business. What would you say that by having so much diversity, what did it help as far as the competitive advantage for the team? You know, what was the collaboration like? What was the satisfaction from the business?
Two things. I'll start by saying my team was extremely diverse, and I didn't make the decision. I just set the culture at the top, and I told my team, I said, listen, let's make sure we have a woman and minority on every slate, and everyone has a fair opportunity to get a job. And they made the choice. In fact, one of my leaders was in Fargo, Caucasian man, Dale Cadillac, and he had 4 people reporting to him, and all 4 were African Americans. So I think it's about setting the culture at the top. It's not about excluding anyone. It's about just giving some people an opportunity to work who otherwise would not be given that opportunity. And I think the business proposition, we all know, right? That is a business imperative. Different people come with different perspective, different thought, different backgrounds, all leads to a valuable product, right? Even when you're developing a product, even when you're marketing a product, it's a simple example. You want to have an extremely diverse marketing department because you can miss or insult a particular group if you don't. So there's value in diversity. So we know that part. So it's really about just being intentional and deliberate about doing it, right? And sometimes you need to help people along that journey, right? Educating them. And sometimes it has to have financial incentives, right? And one of the things with our program, Law Firm Diversity Program, what we do now, we give firms 2% bonuses if they actually meet certain metrics, right? So it's all about the carrot, not the stick always. So you got to incentivize people to really act accordingly.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't be more thrilled how it worked out. The last thing, I guess, well, a couple things. One is you mentioned, you praise the NBA for their efforts for diversity. Obviously, it's a very diverse organization. But then you criticize your own league, the American Bar Association, claiming the organization lags woefully behind many peer organizations. What would be some of your recommendations for improvement?
I think when you say the NBA, so everyone's clear, we're talking the National Basketball Association.
Yeah, that's the national
Not
bar.
the national bar, right?
Yeah, the
National
NBA.
Basketball Authority. And the legal profession lags, right? When diversity, even when you start looking at the accounting profession, it still lags behind the accounting profession in diversity. And it's ironic because it's the legal body that's lagging. I think that is some of the things that I said. I think we have to, and we have some of the smartest people, again, solving some of the most difficult problems of the world. And we've been dealing with this diversity thing. And what happens is, with Microsoft, I've been involved for 20 years, but I've been involved even when I had my own entertainment practice, right? And that situation, there was a lot of Black entertainers because I represent hip hop as well as R&B artists, but there were very few Black lawyers or accountants or money managers. So one of the things I even did back then, I was pretty intentional. It was risky, right? I just basically, when I got the high profile clients, I said, I want to introduce you to women and minorities who are accountants and business managers. Mm-hmm. And of course, the establishment didn't like that because now I'm going against the establishment because that was not the protocol. And I had some other accountants and business managers who I knew very well said, Bruce, what are you doing? I said, listen, you and I have a great relationship, but I'm just trying to expose my clients to other people. And I'm trying to give other people an opportunity to represent high profile clients. Yeah. I think ordinarily would not have to do that. So I think that when I start thinking about what we can do in the legal profession, I think that we have to implement some of the programs that like Brad's doing, like reward people for some of those activities, right? But the law firms can't do it alone. I think in-house counsel have to play a pretty important role in this as well, right? I think we have to work with them in terms of increasing hires and increasing sort of work that we're giving them and making sure and do some follow-up. Many of us have programs, but we have to follow up and make sure they're being enforced internally. So I think those are the type of things that we really, really have to do, I think.
That sounds great. Well, I personally have had the good fortune early on. My business partner, Bob Barker, very, very passionate about this as well. And supporting organizations like MCCA. And well, one of my great stories there is that our first conference we met really great people, but Tom Sager, who was a major supporter, and there's the Tom Sager Award at the annual banquet. Right. He really impressed on me that, again, putting some weight on, and Bob, about having our firm help with some of these initiatives. And I just want to make it clear, you use that phrase, level the playing field, is quite a bit in the book. And I agree with that, it's not about, giving a person a job because they're diverse, giving a person a job because they deserve it, and it's going to help level the playing field. So I guess what would you say to some of the, I'm sure there's plenty of white lawyers sitting in this meeting today, that'll say, oh, this person got the job because they're diverse and I didn't get the job. I mean, talk about leveling the playing field and so some of these people that are going to say that someone maybe got a position that they didn't deserve. I mean, what are your thoughts about that kind of attitude?
I think that's, come on, I don't think that's the case at all. But you're going to always hear that when it comes to minority candidates. Hey, they got the job because they're diverse and it's taken away a job from me, and they may feel threatened, but that's not the point at all. I think there are a lot of qualified African-American women and different immigrant groups who qualify for the job. So the position is not lowering any standards. It's just giving them the opportunity to compete. Like when I hired a diverse team, I mean, many people stated, like, Bruce, you got another diverse candidate on your team, another diverse candidate, and they felt threatened for me. But I said, no, that's not the culture here. I think that what I'm doing is helping Microsoft meet its diversity initiative, and Brad is extremely supportive of it. So no one's doing anything intentionally. No one's intentionally excluding anyone. We're just giving people an opportunity who would not ordinarily have that opportunity, who are extremely qualified. It's not about anyone being unqualified at all. I think one of the things I would like to say is that what people have to realize, I think if you are of a women or any of those groups that I identified, that you have to come in there and you have to be better because of that mentality.
Mhm.
So we all know, and that's how I feel, and I feel that way today. Unfortunately, in my 23 years at Microsoft, I only was on the other side. I only saw one African-American on the other side of the table. So that's a problem. But I think in addition to having to double down and work harder, one of the things that groups deal with is what's known as stereotype threats. And you may say, well, what stereotype threats? Well, it's the frustration, the anxiety that one has to try to dismiss a stereotype assigned to their class, right? So it's a book that's written, Wilson Vivaldi by Claude Steele out of Stanford. So just to bring it home, let's assume a situation where you have a Caucasian male at Harvard, straight A student, wanting to actually take an African-American class. So he takes an African-American study class, all African-American. Now he's in the minority. And that person is really not participating. Why? Because of this thing I'm classifying as stereotype threats. He's trying to dismiss the stereotypes associated with his class, so he doesn't want to say anything that would support that stereotype as being a racist potentially, right? So as a result, the student doesn't perform well. And this is studies that was done by Stanford, right? University. So the same holds true when you got African-Americans or different groups working in a law firm or any environment, right? You're constantly dealing with this thing called stereotype threats. So in addition to trying to do a good job, be better, you still got this extra thing that I want people to understand that we go through.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's not easy, right? So I think what I'm trying to do is all about information. Because I don't think people have information. Some people don't want to be transparent. But I think to me, it's extremely important for me to be transparent to give credibility, right? And yeah, people may look at me a different way, some people, but my life and the life I live is the life I live, and I won't change that for anything. That's just the fact. So it's really all about just trying to give people information and they understand the struggles and the challenge that one goes through to get to this point, but still the challenge that we have once we're at this point, right? You still have to work hard. I still believe I have to work harder. I still have to deal with the stereotype threat to make sure that I'm not supporting a stereotype associated with my class.
Yeah.
Right. So but it's just how it is until it is.
One thing that we haven't talked about is in the book, I had to keep reminding myself that we're about the same age. So this book is not like from 1960 or something, this is modern day times, and seeing this executive from Microsoft be unlawfully arrested or pulled over without cause just was, it's just almost in disbelief, because I mean, again, I hate to be so ignorant, but you're like, oh, I could see police doing that for maybe a poor Black person, but not someone as successful as you. But when those situations happen in the book, you didn't mention like you pulled out and said, hey, I'm an executive at Microsoft or a lawyer. It seemed like you went along with whatever the police were doing, as right or wrong as it was. Is that the way it was? Or you didn't pull out the I'm a lawyer card. You just went along with it. What was your thinking there?
No, I got arrested twice. Not arrested, but spent the night in jail, right? I think that's just the reality. What I remind my colleagues of, and the time I got arrested at Microsoft, the last time I closed a $100 million deal. So that's years ago. We closed $1 billion today, but it was a $100 million deal. We celebrated in the office. And so I went back to the housing projects, public housing with my friends, and I wanted to celebrate with them. And as I pull up to the housing projects, a cop pulled up behind me, said, again, what you normally hear, something's wrong with your back lights. That's the reason for the stop. And then subsequently, hey, you got a ticket and you didn't pay a ticket. So then I went through the system. But the reality is, I told my colleague, I can close a $100 million deal, $1 billion deal with you. and I have a certain amount of respect internally. But when I leave, I'm just a Black guy. I wear jeans, sneakers, and if I'm driving a convertible in a neighborhood, and what I do, to be honest with you, implementing some of Whistling Vivaldi to try to ease people's discomfort. I used to actually, in certain neighborhoods, I'll change the music. I like listening to personally rap and R&B, but if I'm driving through certain communities, I'll change it to jazz or gospel because people feel less threatened with a Black man, bald head, driving a convertible through their neighborhood because their perception that I'm not an executive from Microsoft, right? Yeah. So my reality is that that's just my reality. That's the African American's reality. My only thing is now when I drive my car, if it's a Friday, I said, don't stop me because spending one night in jail is enough. Spending the weekend is a totally different thing. But I think that's just the reality that we live in. And as a result of George Floyd, many people get to see it.
Yeah, well, I can say it was an eye-opener for me, and I think for everyone else, and to have a bit more appreciation for what the story was. We only have a couple of questions and only a few more minutes, but one question, and you sort of just answered this, so if it's a bit redundant, I apologize, but it says, beyond the loneliness factor, how did you get your voice heard when you were the lone minority at the table? We often hear that getting to the table is only half the step. Getting your voice heard is the hard part. Any comments about that? Because I know you were at the table negotiating these deals as the only minority.
Well, I made sure I got my voice heard. There was one time where I actually went to Kentucky, and there was a situation where I was at the table, the lead counsel, and they did not want to address me. They wanted to address an outside counsel I brought to the table. But I'm pretty direct and pretty strong. And I'll tell them, hey, listen, you're going to deal with me. I'm the lead counsel. And so that's me. I think you have to be strong and direct and let people know. And if your voice is not being heard, let people know your voice is not being heard, whether you do it in that room or you do it afterwards. But typically my style is one that I'll say in the room that, hey, this is my role and responsibility, and I'm going to take charge here. What's the worst that can happen? I think one of the things, Microsoft allowed Bruce Jackson to be Bruce Jackson. Bruce Jackson can only be great at being Bruce Jackson, right? You can't be great being someone else. You can be great being you. And so Microsoft has allowed me that. And I guess Brad has always supported that. So it made it easy for me to be me, right? And so me personally, I would speak up in the room. And I think that if it's someone in another company, another place, you have an option. You can speak up in the room or you can speak up afterwards, but you need to speak up because it will continue to happen if you don't.
Yeah, well, I think that's great advice, but also I will say that it's impressive that Microsoft let Bruce be Bruce, because I've talked to others at companies where that's not the culture, and it's good reason to pack and find a different culture, I think. So
right, and it's good reason to stay where I stay.
Yeah, it was a good match. One more question I thought was pretty good was many employers are looking for candidates who have already had the role, a proven candidate, but many candidates have potential but are not proven. How can a candidate approach these employers' concerns, or how does a recruiter help overtype these objections? So I think that's a little bit along the lines of what we were talking about, is someone might not check all the boxes, meaning they're not a sitting public company GC. So how would I consider you a sitting public company GC? I hate to answer the question for you, but that really, I think, is along the same lines as Brad allowing you to be yourself at Microsoft.
Right.
Some CEOs are open-minded and driven and willing to do so, and others aren't. So, what can someone do? In some cases, you can do something about it by reflecting on what your true strengths are. And other times you have all this greatness behind you, and you have an unwilling leadership team to take a chance, to make a bet on you. So,
right. No, I think you're absolutely right.
Well, I will tell you that one of the things I did this morning early on is I Googled, please let me, who are the male Black actors between 50 and 60 that are out there today, most out there. So I could start helping you pick the person to play your part in the movie. As you read this book, what a script for a movie. You almost think it has to be a movie script and not a true story. So we'll be looking for the real movie coming up ahead.
We'll see. The first goal is to get it in everyone's hands so we can inspire and make this a better world for all. We all are a part of it, so we all should play a role.
That sounds great. Well, Bruce, it's been just terrific getting to know you a little bit. I appreciate the opportunity to read your book because it really did impact me and how I think of things a little bit different. And as I mentioned when we started this webinar, that I'm very hopeful that people read the book, pass it on, or inspire others to buy the book. Bruce is dedicating all of the profits from this book to 5 different nonprofit organizations that all support diversity. So this book is going to really make a big difference out there in law and diversity. So
thank you very much, John. Appreciate it. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks so much. All right. Thank you all for coming, and don't be shy about joining our next webinar. We'll also have this recorded and it'll be sent to you in the next couple of weeks. Feel free to sign up for our future webinars, but also come back to our website to share some of Bruce's message with your friends. And again, if anybody is open to looking at new opportunities or looking to make a strategic hire for your team or looking for an executive coach, our coaches are ranked, get a satisfaction rating of 5 out of 5. They're all Fortune 500 former general counsel, and they're amazing people. So feel free to reach out to us at Barker Gilmore. We're here to help support you and your team and your goals or your colleagues. And we certainly do appreciate your referrals. So have a great day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.